Rod Fritz with our presentation, WB9KMO.
Hello, I'm Rod Fritz, WB9KMO from Mesa, Arizona. The history of television goes back 100 years, and hams were pioneers in the 1920s. And today, we've come a long, long way. Amateur radio operators now use television in digital mode using DVB-T and DVB-S. And we'll be describing that alphabet soup to you a little bit later. TV began with mechanical spinning discs. And that wasn't going anywhere very fast, but it was certainly a big stretch from audio to be able to see things. Then Philo T. Farnsworth developed this little electronic tube camera, and we also have CRTs, so now we can do television with electronics instead of mechanical things. It made a world of difference. And then more recently, we have solid-state cameras and flat-screen TVs, and finally, we switched from analog television to digital television, and we'll describe a lot about that later. So, you'll need this ATV studio equipment in your ham shack. So just a quick review, you're going to need at least one video monitor or a digital TV to watch what's going on. You'll need video sources, at least one camera of a sort, but there are several other options. Lighting is very important so that we can see you and in all of your glory. And most people use computers and software, a software package called vMix. And we'll describe that. Video switch is handy if you have multiple inputs. And the one we like is ATEM Mini. And I will show you a picture of that. Then we're going to talk about transmitters and antennas and receivers and antennas. And they're a little bit different from other transmitters and receivers that you might be aware of. Video sources include camcorders. You're pretty comfortable with those. For digital, we like HDMI outputs. And webcams usually have USB outputs, but usually they're connected to a computer and you can get HDMI output from the computer. Laptops with built-in cameras are pretty slick. Everything's all in one place. You just use the HDMI output on the laptop and away you go. That's what you connect to your transmitter. Or your switch if you're going to switch different sources. Lighting. Proper lighting is important. You want to make sure you don't have too much black or too much white in the picture. And getting that balance is a little tricky sometimes. The best lighting is usually from 3 lights spaced around the object. And the key light is the one in front. You want it about 30 degrees over your head and forward of you. And then fill lights would be on the side. And they get rid of shadows and give you enough light for a really nice picture. I hope this is working. That's what I have here. Another video source is security cameras, and those are a lot of fun. Another video source is a video phone. And that's kind of nice because they have built-in computers, usually running the Android system. And what's nice about that is that you can bring up things like the mesh network, and then they have HDMI outputs that you can connect to your switch or your transmitter. And another video source that's really handy are video files that you've recorded one way or another. You can just play the files through your computer and output the HDMI into your transmit system. You can select video with a video switch. There are a couple of ways that are commonly done. On the right, you see an ATEM Mini, which is an electronic switch. And a lot of switches will cause delays, but this one is very quick. So we highly recommend this. And that you just plug your HDMI inputs into it, You have an HDMI output then that goes to your transmitter. On the left, you see a screen from a PC, and you do the switching there with your PC using a program called vMix. It's a free program unless you get really fancy and want a lot of inputs, but you get 4 inputs for free. Highly recommended to try this. And again, the inputs go into your computer one way or the other, and then you use the HDMI output to go into your transmitter system. Thank you. That's all I've got for now. Let's turn it over to Mike Collis, WA6SVT.
Hello, I'm Mike Collis, WA6SVT, and I've been into amateur television for over 40 years. So I guess that makes me an elder. First, we'll talk about comparing the spectrum of a DVB-T narrowband 2 megahertz bandwidth signal versus a 6 megahertz wide vestigial sideband ATV signal. And the screen on the left is 2 megahertz. And as you can see, it has kind of a haystack effect. So you have full power over slightly less than 2 megahertz bandwidth. And in the case of 434 megahertz, we do that so that we stay out of the 432 weak signal and the Oscar satellite band above 435. In the case of the AM signal at 434 megahertz, most of the power is at the visual carrier. Most of the lower carrier is cut off, and then there's an oral carrier at the very far right of the screen, and the little fuzzy stuff in between is the video sidebands. So kind of comparing the analog to digital, let's jump into our next slide, which is a basic DVB-T digital system. We use a typically a high definition TV camcorder, or you can use standard definition NTSC and upgrade it. We use a DVB-T exciter modulator, and then we drive a very linear amplifier and then off to our antenna. A receiver for best sensitivity, we recommend a preamplifier followed by a high-des or other brand DVB-T receiver, and then into your high-definition monitor. Our next slide shows a picture of some of the high-des and amplifier equipment. High-des receivers on the left, and on the right is a amplifier by K86H TV video, and an exciter by high-des, and then a high-definition camcorder. We talked about very linear amplifiers. A good example of that is a high-power version on the left that's good for 10 watts. These are great for your base station, or you can use them for an ATV repeater. If you want to run portable for like ARES or other emergency services, a smaller 3-watt version is a little easier to take, although you can use the high power if you've got room in your backpack or wherever for that. Next slide is analog ATV transmitters and receivers, and there's still quite a bit of analog activity. On the far left is a earlier version of the K86H TV transmitter using a vestigial sideband exciter embedded in the front panel, and one of his amplifiers all in one case. To the right of that, with the black face, is one of the PC Electronics transceivers. That one's a TC70, I believe. Those are still available on the used market. And then below, on the left, is an MFJ transmitter, 5 watts maximum peak sync, about 2 or 3 watts average. And to the right of that is a 1 watt AEA transmitter available on the used market. That is a vestigial sideband transmitter. So 2 vestigials, and the other 2, the PC and the MFJ, are full AM. There's no filtering at the lower sideband. If you want to operate or receive ATV on the 23 centimeter band or higher bands, down converter is typically used. Our example here is the K86H TV model T3-7, or on the used market, the PC Electronics TVC 12S and E. There's 3 or 4 different versions, both crystal controlled, synthesized, and VFO that Tom had over the years. If you want to extend your range on from simplex to repeater, here's a basic DVB-T repeater. This one's in band, so it's transmitting and receiving within 70 centimeters. And this is one that K86HTV Video can build for you if you'd like it, or you can buy the modules and put it together yourself. Our next slide shows a much larger ATV system. This is part of the amateur TV network. This is our hub repeater at Santiago Peak. We have a 5910 FM transmitter, a 1253 vestigial sideband transmitter that will soon be switched to DVB-T. It currently has DVB-T on 434, vestigial sideband on 434, and FM input on 2441.5, and a bunch of link radios and voice and control systems. Our next slide here, this is a basic map of our linked repeater systems in the tri-state area. We also have chapters in other countries. The green lines are the active ones, the red ones are under construction. Sources for equipment. Currently, hides.com.tw, they're out of Taiwan, and they are ATVers who have a commercial business, and they have a modified version of their equipment for ham radio, which is very nice of them. And then K86HTV.com, he sells the amplifiers that work really well with the high-des equipment. And he also has analog FM, and he can supply the vestigial sideband exciters as well. He has down converters and amplifiers. Then we have MFJ.com, and they have just the AM transmitter for the 70 centimeter band. That's it for the equipment. Look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you, Mike. Hello, I'm Roland Hoffman, KC6JPG. I'm the Digital Systems Director for the Amateur Television Network, and I'm also the Net Control Operator for our Southern California and Nevada chapter for ATN. Well, how'd I get started? Well, in 1993, I wanted to watch NASA Select and watch the space shuttle programs while they're on a mission. And I had cable, and I did not have the luxury of having NASA Select with my cable television service. So I heard that one of the ATV repeaters do transmit the space shuttle program when the shuttles are in a mission. And so I bought a down converter, I got some low loss coax, and I got a beam antenna, and I fixed it towards the direction of Mount Wilson. And as soon as I turned on my down converter and watched it on my TV screen, I saw a guy rocking in a rocking chair. And it had the call signs KA6DPS. And I said to myself, who in the heck is this? And so, of course, there was a 2-meter frequency, 146.43. And I got on my 2-meter radio and I announced myself. And he said, who that? And I announced myself, KC6JPG. And history was made. Oh, it was, what a ride. Well, every Tuesday evening at 7:30 p.m. Pacific Time, we host the Amateur Television Network's The Weekly Net. And we get people from not just around our system, around the RF region, but throughout the entire world. It has become an international party, and we invite you to join us. And if you're not within our ATN chapter repeater systems, you can always check in on our Whereby system at whereby.com/ATN1. And so, I bet the big curious question you might ask is, how far has an amateur television signal transmitted? Well, I will tell you. Back in 1994, an ATV distance record has been set. Paul, KH6HME, transmitted a beacon signal from high atop Mauna Loa on the island of Hawaii. Now, his signal was first received by Gordon West, WB6NOA, with a distance of 2,509 miles. And of course, you can see the picture right there on the screen. Now, in regards to digital amateur television, how far has a digital ATV signal been recorded? Well, so far, back in 2014, a distance of 180 miles DVB-T with 2 megahertz bandwidth, simplex, was successfully received by W8ZCF. Now, how do we measure the signal strength of an ATV signal? Well, you're familiar with the S meter for the voice radios. Well, in a video, we have a different system. We have what we call P units, and a P unit is simply a picture unit. And so when we say P0, well, it's just like the top left of the screen here, where it's just simply all snow. And you can just barely see any kind of resemblance of a picture. P1 is where you start seeing sync bars and some sort of a picture, but it's mostly snow. P2, well, the picture now starts to lock in. You may get some black and white and color, back and forth. P3, color starts locking in, still a lot of snow. P4, picture looks pretty darn good with a little bit of snow in it. And of course, P5 is closed circuit quality. When we get into digital amateur television, well, guess what? Our pictures, when we're locked into the system, well, whether it be a repeater or simplex, well, our pictures are P5, pretty much. And anytime that we're on what we call the digital cliff, well, that's when we'll start seeing some artifacts like tiling and freeze frames. And then once we're beyond the range, then it will just simply just lock up as a freeze frame or no picture at all, like a black picture. The signals that you're looking at on this chart compares between VUSB, or known as vestigial upper sideband, compared with FM modulation and DVB-T QPSK modulation. VUSB, as you can see, you'll start being detected just above minus 100 dBm, and then you'll start getting a closed circuit P5 picture at approximately minus 60 dBm. FM TV, pretty much in the same range. You can get a full closed circuit quality picture at approximately minus 83 dBm. DVB-T, on the other hand, once it receives its signal at approximately minus 98 dBm, and it will lock in, and then you will get pretty much a P5 picture once your signal gets stronger. The United States, the ATV repeaters in the United States, well, we currently have approximately 41 active ATV repeaters throughout the country. 23 repeaters within the country are analog only at this time, and then of course 18 of these repeaters are either in the digital mode or what we call mixed modes, where we have digital in with analog out, or analog in with digital out, and of course we have what we call full hybrid, which is either analog or digital. 21 of these repeaters have an output on 70 centimeter bands, which that means is if you have a cable ready television set or a cable ready box, you can simply hook up a beam antenna directly into the back of your TV set, set it on cable channel 59, and you can receive the 434 input signal, or channel 57 for 426.25. Well, some of you are saying, well, that sounds, a lot of fun, but, I really want to watch ATV without investing in any equipment, or I'm just simply out of a range of an ATV repeater. Well, how can I watch it? Well, have no fear. All you have to do is go to one of the streaming websites that we're constantly streaming our video. For example, the British Amateur Television Club has a streaming system on their website, which is batc.org.uk/live. And you will see a list of amateur television repeaters currently broadcasting or hamcasting live. And you can watch their video on their players. On the Amateur Television Network, we're streaming on YouTube 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And you can watch us and you can chat with us on youtube.com/amateur television network. We're also integrating amateur television into the mesh system. KC6JPG, that's my call sign. I got a streaming system plugged into the Arden Mesh system. So if you go into the Arden Mesh, just find KC6JPG, and you can find a streaming system for the Santiago Peak repeater system, and you can just type in RTSP //W6ATN-stream.local.mesh, and of course the port number 554/live, and you can watch our live signal on the Arden Mesh network. So, big question. Amateur television, what is it used for? Well, that's a big question. Well, 4 big things that happen with amateur television. 1, emergency communications, public service, education, and of course, fun and socializing. Because think about it, amateur television is the original social media network. Emergency communications, well, that comes huge with the amateur television network system. Most of our repeater system have cameras on top of the repeaters on top of the mountaintops. And so, especially here in California where wildfires are quite frequent every year, these cameras have been very, very useful for emergency operations centers through law enforcement and our fire personnel, so they can deploy resources, so they can protect life and as well as property and whatever resources they need to combat the event. This is a typical picture of an EOC center, Emergency Operations Center, and a lot of emergency operations centers do have down converters or receivers to receive their local amateur television repeater system. And therefore, they'll be able to capture many different events, including watching the wildfires, and so they can deploy resources more effectively. Public service is huge within the amateur television network. We deploy our mobile video truck to many different events to help and engage many different events and help local officials to ensure a successful event, whether it be races, bicycle events, parades, many different events that we serve through our local community. Education is huge with the amateur television network. This is a picture of what we have here is we have Tom, WB6HYH on the camera, and we have Gary, W6KVC, and they're manning the camera, and Gary's manning the switcher. The San Bernardino Microwave Society's monthly meeting. They have fantastic topics and to really engage the amateur radio community in the hobby of microwave technology. We also have amateur television equipment on board the International Space Station. Pictured is that blue box is simply a 20-watt DVB-S transmitter, which is located on the International Space Station. In the future, we're going to continue our digital transition for our ATV repeaters throughout the country. IP linking with ATV repeater systems throughout the country and the world so we can communicate with many ATVers from distant places. And of course, communicating with other ATVers throughout the world using other digital modes, including DMR radio, where we have a talk group known as ATV Talk 9410. So we encourage you to plug in our talk group onto your DMR radios. And now I'd like to pass it to Jim Andrews as he'll talk in depth about DVB technology.
Hello, I'm Jim Andrews, KH6HTV, and I live in Boulder, Colorado. The KH6 call, though, is because for the past 18 years I've been a retired snowbird living on the island of Maui in the Hawaiian Islands during the winter time. So, DVB-T has become the choice for most digital ATV hams in the U.S., and it is in fact the broadcast standard used for almost all the rest of the world, with the sole exceptions of the U.S., Canada, Mexico, and South Korea. In this DVB-T, they use either 2,000 or 8,000 closely spaced subcarriers carrying packetized digital data. And it uses 3 possible modulations, QPSK, which is purely 90-degree phase shifting, or 2 levels of quadrature amplitude modulation, which is both phase shifting and amplitude modulating. DVB-T includes pilot tones in the 8,000 subcarriers, and the receiver uses these pilot tones to dynamically characterize the channel and determine the channel's impulse response. It then deconvolves out the signal, eliminating these echoes. The echoes would have been seen as ghosts on analog TV. And this system also works extremely well for removing Doppler shift. I, in fact, have driven at over 70 miles per hour down the highway, both transmitting and receiving with DVB-T, and encountered no problems. Whereas with ATSC, any Doppler shift at all and the signal locks up. So what is the differences between these various ones? Well, the biggest difference for us from a ham perspective is the sensitivity of the receiver. With QPSK, we can get down to minus 97 dBm. We lose 5 dB if we go to 16 QAM, and we lose another 10 dB going to 64. If we add a low noise preamp, we can usually buy about another 3 dB in sensitivity over these numbers. And also, if we go to extremely aggressive forward error correction, we can also buy maybe about another 3 dB. If you want to get by really cheap, a USB TV tuner dongle can be had for as low as $10. They're more typically in the $20, $30 range. These are the same dongles that many hams are already using as wideband SDR receivers. However, I caution you, not everybody's been able to get them to work, especially when they've been problematic on Windows 10, and there are issues of bogus drivers out there. And so, again, good luck. So let's see what these numbers would look like if we take a typical amplifier used in the transmitter. I'm going to run it saturated for FM. I get 65 watts. If I look at where the 1 dB gain compression is on this amplifier, maybe about 50 watts. So if I'm running single sideband, I may in fact run it up to that 1 dB gain compression point at 50 watts peak PEP. For this same amplifier, if I want to run analog video through it and don't have any compression on the sync pulse, so I'm back into much more linear range, I'm going to rate that probably at about 25 watts. But again, that's going to be peak envelope power at 25 watts. And the average power would be less than that. For digital TV, for this same amplifier, we're going to get 10 watts RMS out of that. So what that means is we're going to need a minimum of 8 dB headroom in this amplifier to accommodate the peaks in that noise-like digital signal. So these are some typical amplifiers that I build. The one on the left is a high power version, putting out 10 watts RMS for digital. Actually about 65 to 70 watts if you used it in the FM service. And this would typically be used for base stations and repeaters. The amplifier on the right is a medium power amplifier putting out 3 watts, and we use these primarily for portable service in the ARES, where they're running off of batteries and you don't want to supply as much current as required by the other high power amplifier, especially if you're carrying that battery in your backpack. So I do have amplifiers for all 3 bands of 70, 33, and 23 centimeters, and they all have at least 50 dB of gain, and they have adjustable power levels where you can drop the power by 5 to 10, or 10 dB. I want to thank Grant Hooper KV7 WSD for inviting me to talk to you today. Grant and Vicky were visitors in our home on Maui for the Maui Ham Club Christmas picnic and barbecue a couple of years ago.
And of course, I'd like to say thank you very, very much for the Amateur Television Network, the Amateur Radio Emergency Data Network, or ARDN. We'd like to also thank Boulder County Amateur Radio Services, British Amateur Television Club, the Radio Amateur Satellite Corporation, the San Bernardino Microwave Society, YouTube, Art Towsley, WA8RMC, Farrell Winder, W8ZCF, Gary Heston, W6KVC, Jim Andrews, KH6HTV, Kevin Jacobson, AD7OI, and Steve Estes, KB7KWK, for their contributions to this presentation. For more information, you can always contact us through the Amateur Television Network through our website, www.atn-tv.com. You can also contact one of us if you need more information. So you can see that right on the screen. So remember, hams love to be seen and heard. And of course, with amateur television, you won't be left behind. Just get on ATV. Thank you very much for watching, and we're here to answer your questions.
Well, welcome, welcome, welcome. I certainly hope you enjoyed that presentation. Thank you very much. Like I said, I'm Roland Hoffman, KC6JPG, and of course I've been very active in amateur television since 1993, and glad to be here with you. I also like to bring up Mr. Rod Fritz right now, WB9KMO. Rod, say hello to everybody.
Hello, everybody. I'm Rod, WB9KMO in Mesa, Arizona. If you listened to the beginning, you heard that already. And this is my studio, my ATV studio here, and I have a lot of wacky, weird characters that I bring out from time to time. It's a lot of fun to operate amateur television. So we're looking forward to your questions. 30-second background on me. I grew up in Wisconsin, became a ham in 1971 when I was attending the University of Wisconsin in Madison, and got my ham license then, novice for a year, and then I got my advanced license. Got busy with ATV in 1975, put my first ATV repeater on in 1980 after I moved from Madison to Santa Barbara. I lived in Santa Barbara for 35 years. That ATV repeater is still on the air after 41 years. And then I retired about 8 years ago, moved to Mesa, Arizona, where I set up a couple more repeaters, and I'm helping link them together here. So that brings you up to date. I've got a lot of repeaters that I'm responsible for, and we've got a huge team that's working on them to keep the video on the air to everywhere. I don't want to take any more time. I really want to get to some questions here. I'm going to turn it back to Roland. Thanks, Roland, for running the show.
No, you're very, very welcome, Rod. Thank you very much for the great intro, and thank you very much for all that you do with the Amateur Television Network. And of course, Rod has served as president of the ATN way back, and he did a fantastic job when he was in his tenure. And like I said, we have a great group of people that ranges from all facets of life, basically. So we have technicians and from telco to video, transmitter engineers, and of course me, I was the broadcast studio engineer, both on air, behind the scenes. But I love the behind the scenes stuff. That's my favorite part. I like to bring up Jim, WA3JAT. Jim, it's great to see you, my friend. Thank you very much for participating with us.
Good morning. I'm having some problems with my video feed, so I'm not going to do anything except monitor on here. You can go ahead and take it back, Roland.
Okay, no problem, Jim. Well, thank you. I'm going to bring all three of us up on the screen because we got some fantastic questions happening right now. And of course, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up those questions on the screen so you all can see everyone's everyone's questions. So here we go. We're starting with the Q&A. We're going to start with a Shirley Dulce, KE1L. And of course, she was saying, was that analog TV that we were watching or something else? Let me tell you, it's something else. It's amateur television. It's both analog and digital television. We still have the analog systems on our repeater systems here in the amateur television network, so that people that do have the legacy equipment that they find at flea markets, have no fear, they can still get on into our system. So really, really cool stuff. And so I'm glad you enjoyed the presentation. Thank you so much. Okay, we're going to go to Bo here, and K6EAU, and he's saying, hello, hello. Thank you for the presentation. Yes, Rod.
The context of that first question was when things first started up. When I think it was Earl was on the live feed. So she was wondering, was that analog TV on the live feed from Santiago Peak?
Well, this is very interesting with Earl, because what Earl is doing, he is actually transmitting FM video, analog video, into a relay station that he set up at his shop. And the reason being is because he lives in a spot called the Cathedral Cove, and he is actually blocked direct line of sight from the Snow Peak repeater system. And so what he's doing, he's actually getting in via FM into Snow by relay, and then outputting DVB-T using 4 megahertz bandwidth. So it is a true hybrid situation, but our first digital ATV system on the amateur television network that we established about 7 years ago now. So it's great. So you're seeing a hybrid system in action. Okay. Thanks, Rob, for clarifying. Really appreciate that. Okay, let's go back to Bo. Hello, hello. Thank you for your presentation. Do you happen to know how to access the talk again from the start? Any particular activity using balloons? And are you familiar with parachute mobile operations? Well, you know, anything is possible with amateur television. And yes, balloon ATV is very popular because they usually put an APRS package as well as ATV package on occasion. And we can actually see balloon launches and, you know, using line of sight, whether it be DVB-S, DVB-T, or simply analog. The equipment is just getting smaller and smaller, which is really cool. So yes, there have been ATV operations using ATV operation on parachutes and balloons. Go ahead, Rod.
Yeah, just a little side note. If you're interested in hand balloons, you probably know Bill Brown, WB9KMO, very good friend of mine. And we powwowed together in Santa Barbara when I was there. He was going to the university, and we lived there at the same time and operated ATV at the same time. One of the things that we did, I think it was about 1989, is we assembled perhaps the first ham radio balloon package with amateur television on it at my house, and we launched it from Victorville. And that video is actually out on YouTube, so you can see it. It was very crude, but it worked. You can see the picture from down below as it goes up, and the picture from above as it takes off. And back in those days, it spun a lot, and it was dizzying to watch. But since then, both of us have done a lot with amateur television on balloons. I just don't know anything about the parachute. I'm going to learn something about this parachute activity that you're talking about.
Oh, that's easy, Rod. Just strap a video camera on your body, go up on an airplane, and jump out and deploy your parachute.
Oh, that's it? Okay. Well, okay, I'm familiar.
Sure, why not? Anything's possible with amateur television.
I wasn't sure what he was referring to, and if you want to clarify, just give us another note, Bo. Back to you.
I love these questions. Okay, we're going to go to Amanda Christie, and her call sign is VE9OHM. I love the suffix of that call. There's Ohm's law right there. I love it. Can you transmit lower resolution images in order to use less bandwidth, similar to BW moon landing footage? Well, yes, you can. Definitely experimenting with simplex operations using, well, let's say DVB-T. And with simplex, we use 2 megahertz bandwidth. So that's basically using less bandwidth, and of course less resources. And of course we're using 2 megahertz bandwidth on our repeater systems because we're on the 70 centimeter band, and especially here in Southern California, we're very, very crowded when it comes to 70 centimeters. So we're forced to use 2 megahertz bandwidth. A little example. Oh, go ahead, Rod. Go ahead.
Oh, I'll wait till you're done. I just wanted to get a word in before we move on to the next question.
Well, you got the word.
So, yeah, so we use 2 megahertz on 434 megahertz, 2 megahertz wide on 434 so that we can avoid interfering with the weak signal guys on 432 and satellites on 435. But that's wide bandwidth compared to what some of the people are using now. I know they're down as half a megahertz bandwidth, and the DXers love that because the narrower bandwidth allows them to make longer distance contacts. If you're familiar with the QO 100 satellite that is on the other side of the Earth from us, we can't access it, but those guys are having a blast with it over there. They have several channels set up, and some I know are less than 2 megahertz wide. So good question. Back to you, Roland.
Oh, thank you, Rod. And here's an example of less bandwidth that we're using. KD6NIZ, Ron Hill, he's using DVB-T going into Mount Wilson. And of course, sometimes we get a little bit of an edge problem just because, he is using 2 megahertz bandwidth, but he's not quite line of sight of the repeater. So this is usually what happens when you're on that, what they call that digital cliff. And this is a good example. So Ron does very well when it comes to using less bandwidth, but of course, sometimes you get a little bit of digital artifacting, if you're not line of sight with a repeater system. So that's there you go. There's an example right there. So, all right. Well, guess what? Bo just replied back to your question, Rod, and regarding parachuting mobile. And he says, for Rod and all, parachutemobile.com. We use analog and experimenting with newer systems, and I do part of ground control for jumps from Byron Airport in California, VHF and HF jumps. Well, Bo, thank you very much for sharing that. That's awesome. Really cool.
Yeah, I'm familiar in Santa Barbara with people using hang gliders, and I know they've had cameras on. I don't know if they've operated ATV on there though. So yeah, but it's a lot of fun when you're doing those crazy things with great views to have some kind of video going on. Thanks for the clarification, and I'm glad you're having fun with that.
Definitely having fun out there. That's what it's all about with amateur radio. It's 90% fun, 10% technology. And speaking of technology, another thing that we'd love to touch, and Jim Andrews on the video touched about it, is SDR radio. Experimentation on amateur television network, or amateur television in general, that is huge. And we got quite a few people doing what we call the Lime SDR and SDR Angel receiving DVB-T or DVB-S formats. And so we have Matt and over by the Lake Elsinore area, and he's playing around with Lime SDR and making that into a DVB-T transmitter or an exciter. So, and of course, once he gets it perfected, we're going to have the Python program available on our website. And of course, our website is www.atn-tv.com. So definitely check that out for all kinds of information regarding our operations of amateur television. You can look at site maps, and you can look at our repeater coverage maps, and of course, a lot of historical photos from way back when amateur television was in its big heyday back in the 90s, mainly 80s and 90s. And so now with the whole internet realm of things, now we can use not just analog or digital using transmit, but whereby as something to get on and access amateur television for free. So we definitely encourage you to participate with us on our nets on Tuesday evenings here at 7:30 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. And of course, Sundays we have our chapter in Arizona that we participate with for the Arizona Net. So definitely participate on our nets on Tuesdays and Sundays. We would love to have you. Okay, question back to Amanda. Can you, or no, we already had that one. We go back to Shirley. Let's go back to Shirley. She goes, answering the other question, replays of the presentation will be available. Yes, they will. The people at QSO today will have this presentation made available, usually within 30 days after the event. So definitely check it out. In case you just happen to come on just right into the middle of the presentation, you can definitely check it out in the replay within 30 days. Okay, let's go to Warren. WB8 VCR. Hold on, Rod. Hold on. I know you're itching. I'm itching too. Believe me. What would a bare bones analog receive setup require? Pushing 80. This old dog lazy nowadays. Well, guess what? Age is just a number, my friend, and it's just laps around the sun. That's all it is. Because in amateur television, anything can be done. Rod, I'm going to pick it up with you. Go.
Okay. First of all, back to the question about the presentations being available. I heard pretty officially that they'll probably be, they'll start playing within a couple of days after the show is over. They think they can do it a lot faster this time because of the mechanisms they have. And they will play for 30 days. They also imply they will be recorded and played back, and that would be a first. But definitely the presentations themselves. And I love that too, because all too often two happen at the same time. And I want to put all of them. So yeah, and they'll play for 30 days, so you have plenty of opportunity, and it should happen pretty quickly. So you want to answer Shirley's question? Oh, that's Shirley's question. Who is the one asking about the analog?
Yes, we're going to Warren because we got a lot of questions that we got to cover. So, so we're going to go back to Warren, WB5VCR. Love that calls too. That's really cool for amateur television. Okay, bare bones analog receive setup. Okay, so a couple of options you can do depending on your location. If you happen to be living near a repeater system, especially in the Midwest and the East Coast, a lot of them transmit in the 70 centimeter band on the output. Basically how to find that out is you can go onto the internet, you can do a repeater call book lookup, go to ATV and see if there's any ATV activity in your area. And if you happen to have an ATV repeater system that is transmitting in the 70 centimeter band, well, all you need is a beam antenna, some low loss coax line like LMR 400 or 9913, or even better, like 5/8 or 7/8 hard line. But usually LMR 400 is just fine because you want low loss coax line, and then either a cable ready set top box or a cable ready television set or a television monitor. You just simply hook up that antenna to the feed line right in the back of your monitor. And of course, you can put a preamp. We do like to recommend a preamp so you can boost your signal up. And then if the repeater system's on 439, then you can transmit, or you can put it on cable mode, channel 60. And you'll be able to watch the ATV action on the cable mode, cable channel 60. And if there's 426, 427 activity, then that's channel 57 on your TV set. That is the bare bones, low cost way of doing it. And of course, if you have people using analog transmitters, hey, they're available at flea markets. You never know what you're going to find in a flea market, and you'll be able to pick up one of those for next to nothing. And usually they're on 426.25 or 434. You can use those for simplex, and like I said, you can get that beam antenna or even an Omni if you're close range with the back of a TV set, aim it right at it, and you're a TV star. Jim, you want to comment?
not have a comment except for the fact the parachute idea kind of intrigued me a little bit. That sounds pretty exciting. I have a pilot's license, but I have to confess I've never had to jump and use a parachute. Pilots have a saying: "There's no good reason to jump out of a perfectly good airplane."
That's it. I'll tell you, I was planning on getting into aviation. I actually got up on a Cessna 172 and had a lot of fun. And anyway, but getting back to amateur television, yes, Rod, go ahead.
A couple of procedural things that are pretty important, and I just want the audience to know this as well. This year, we do not have to stop our Q&A at the top of the hour. We can go as long as we want. It's a change in rules. They allow that. So you don't have to run away unless you're just aching to get to another presentation, and I can understand that. Again, if they record all of this stuff, it would be good to have all of that information, all of these questions and answers recorded, and you can watch them later. The other thing is there is supposed to be a way for us to give you handouts. Maybe some of you know about that. I know that we can do it, but I don't know how. I submitted some, and no one responded back to me how we can get them to you. So somewhere I will figure it out, and if you figure it out, we'll definitely make them available. One of the handouts is particularly important because it is a sheet that lists a lot of pieces of equipment and where you can get them. And a lot of this stuff zooms by really fast on a presentation or Q&A. So that document is going to be really valuable if you really want to size up what's available out there and weigh what you might want to buy to get on the air. Okay, back to you, Roland.
Thank you very much. We got a lot of questions right now. We got to, this is great. Got some awesome questions out there.
I can stay all day and all night, but he's running the show, so.
We're all running the show. You got it. Well, we're going to go to KE5STL. That's Peter Belbin. And he is asking this big question. Okay, bring it on, baby. Here we go. All right. Here we go. Oh, that's Shirley. Let's get that. Here we go. Let's go here. There we go. Let's do this. There we go. Peter, does ATV get used in supporting sport events such as bike rides, marathons with multiple video feeds? What does that look like in terms of people resources, and how would that be available for officials? Do they see all feeds? Or are they given, I'm trying to unhide this here. There we go. Will they see multiple feeds? How does that look like in terms of people, resources? Will that be available for officials? Will they be able to see all feeds, or are they given a single switch result? Well, that's a big loaded question, and we got a big loaded answer for you. Back
you can start with the Rose Parade.
It did. It started with the Rose Parade. And we actually had manned cameras and back then it was utilizing simplex operation into the control center at the Rose Parade. And so what basically be a director, and they'll just say, camera one, usually camera one is on the corner of Colorado and Orange Grove. And then we had about 12 cameras all the way down the parade route. So each camera covered about a mile. And so that was the early days. And of course, today, yes, we do utilize those kind of resources because I'm a cyclist myself and I do the multiple sclerosis events. We do have amateur radio operations and we do have amateur television out there utilizing it. But what's getting very, very popular these days is called mesh networking, utilizing video. And with mesh networking, you're able to have multiple feeds within the same system. So if you're like, say, you have a free software called OBS Studio, you can have all these RTSP feeds all lined up together, and then boom, you have a big multi-view display, and you can actually see your event right there. And same thing with amateur television. We do have repeater system operations. We can go point, one link to one link to one link. We can do that. Or we can utilize a whereby system, or we can use Team Talk on the Arden Mesh. So the Amateur Television Network, we do cover on the RF side of things, but we also cover into the digital side of things as well. So multiple ways to do it. Did you want to fill in, Rod?
Yeah, just one last comment, and you know this very well because you're very active in it. We're trying to merge mesh video and amateur television together, integrate them together so that we get the best of both worlds. And a lot of times mesh video is easiest to set up for a one-to-one connection, or like he said, if you're feeding to one location, you might have all of your video go there. But mesh networking can be bandwidth limited sometimes. And so to get a lot of videos going on through a single pipe can be a problem. And that's where amateur television shines. So the ideal situation is use mesh, or you can use amateur television to get the information to a repeater. Once it's at a repeater, it transmits, and it was designed for mass distribution very easily. Lots of people can receive in lots of places all at once. And a byproduct of all of this is the streaming that we do. Once it's on the repeater, we stream it to YouTube, British Amateur Television Club, and back into the mesh network itself. So it's very important that people try to keep that in mind, that if you merge those two modes, you might get the best of both worlds. Back to you.
Well, thank you, Rod. Hey, look at this. I got a little surprise for you. You know who Gordon was.
Gordo, WB9KMO. We look forward to seeing all the Amateur Television Network folks there. And on Saturday morning, Kevin of the BioInno battery folks will be with me and a couple of other experts for an 8 to 9 o'clock before the show opens get together with his batteries taken apart. And the BioInno batteries are wonderful for portable ATV operations. So if ever you wanted to meet Kevin up close and his engineers on this nickel metal lithium iron phosphate, there we go, technology versus plain old lead acid or any others, he'll be there in the Salon B. So hope to see everybody there.
Well, there you go. There's a little example of Gordon talking about bio batteries. And so, like I said, our technology is just getting, better and better, trying to get away from lead acid and trying to get into more environmentally friendly stuff. All right, continuing on. We got Aubrey King, WB4SEA, and she is saying, is the digital DVB-T used much in the Midwest? I lived in Louisville, Kentucky, and I was active on 43925 analog ATV in the past. I was a member of the ATV club in Indianapolis. Well, that is awesome, Aubrey. Well, get back into ATV. I know we have Bowling Green, Kentucky as a repeater system there. They are an ATN chapter. There is talks about getting into digital, but I believe they're still in analog at this point. And they do sometimes stream, and they do participate on our nets on occasion. So we definitely encourage you that definitely encourage you to get back into ATV again. And of course, in the meantime, you can always join us on our Whereby channel, whereby.com/ATN1. And you can join us definitely on Tuesday evenings as well as on Sundays. And we would love to have you. Rod, you want to fill in?
No, you covered it well. Back to you.
Okay. All right. Well, let's go to Jack Coons, N8MCA. And he is asking, where is the presentation and how do I tune into ATV with an SDR dongle? Well, getting into an SDR dongle will require programming, of course, and you probably be able to get some information regarding, making, whether it be a DVB-S receive station or a DVB-T receive station. And of course, DVB-S is very popular in our Northern California area with Mount Diablo Amateur Television Group. They're DVB-S using 1.2 as an output. And of course, they're using all different kinds of inputs as well, using whether it be 70 centimeters or on 1.2. And so you can definitely create an SDR dongle for that and tuning into those frequencies. So that would be really, really cool. Hopefully that answered your question, my friend. Let's see. Okay, so hey, have no fear. So hey, if you guys have more questions, please ask away. We're here to answer your questions. And Jim, you'd like to have anything more about your experience about amateur television? Okay, we'll go back to Rod. Rod?
Okay, back to Jack's question. Where's the presentation? I don't know if he covered that. Maybe I missed it. I don't know where all of this stuff originates. It kind of doesn't matter because it's everywhere. It's on the internet, so that's the way to look at it. There are elements of it all over the world, and I know that some of the people that worked on it are some of the more active people actually were outside of the United States. So it's an international endeavor, and I'm really good that so many people from so many places can get together and make it happen. And then note on SDR dongles, there are a lot of different kinds. Some of them actually have amateur television, television decoding built into them. So some of them are actually DVB-S or DVB-T dongles as well. And oftentimes, though, there are some limitations there on the bandwidth that gets used. Commonly, DVB-S and DVB-T use 6 megahertz and 8 megahertz bandwidth, and some of these devices don't go as narrow as 2. Some do. So it depends what device you have, and it's fun to play with those, but it's going to be a learning experience. You just have to figure out what the characteristics are, and maybe find some people that have a lot of experience doing magical things with them. And you can do magical things. It may require some programming or some expertise, and some of that's beyond me, so I haven't played with them very much. Okay, back to you.
Oh, very good. Well, thank you, Rod. Amanda has replied back and had a follow-up question. And so Amanda, WB9KMO, love it. I had a follow-up question about low bandwidth. Is special equipment or software needed for transmitting or receiving the very low bandwidth stuff? I have seen people using SDR Angel, using, believe it or not, 2 meters, using 1 megahertz bandwidth, and doing that on ATV. We saw that demonstration 2 years ago with a wonderful guy, is N2FIX, and he was demonstrating that for us, and we thought that was really, really cool. So yes, there have been successes in regarding using low bandwidth SDR type software. So thank you very much for that question, Amanda. That's great. Okay. Wow, that kind of wrapped up all the questions. Go ahead, Rod.
Yeah, as long as let's wait for some more questions. Bring those questions in. We love to answer questions because then we're giving you the information that you want to hear rather than just talking about things that we think you want to hear. But back to this low bandwidth stuff. I don't know if you're aware of it, but there has been a mode, a television mode around for a long time. Well, you've heard of slow scan TV. Well, that's fixed. That's still pictures. That's not what we consider amateur television, which is we consider fast scan mode or moving pictures. But there is a medium scan television that's been around for a long time. And it kind of spun off from the early mechanical televisions that were out there that had very slow scan rates. And they were like 40 by 40 pixel screens and that kind of stuff. And I know that this medium scan has used bandwidth as low as 30 kilohertz wide to get moving pictures with that low bandwidth. Back in the old days, they did this mechanically, but nowadays with things like Raspberry Pis and other inexpensive computers, you can do all kinds of things. But if you're going to do something exotic, I think the hardware that you need is not necessary, is probably readily available. You probably don't have to do much construction because the computers are out there. And but programming wise, if you're doing something that's non-standard, you're going to end up writing programs yourself, which can be a lot of fun, and you can learn a lot that way, but it can also be time consuming and maybe beyond the scope of a lot of people. So again, I don't know if that answers your question, but we'll be happy to follow up and refine. Go ahead and refine your question. We'll refine our answers. Unfortunately, I don't have a lot of experience with it. I've just casually observed other people doing things. Some of the people that, for example, DATV, it's called, DATV Express, I think is an example. One of our buddies in Ohio, Art Towsley, and he has a friend in California that did a lot of work on it too. They built up a little board, and they originally made it to operate DVB-S. But people said, well, what else can it do? Okay, and so they kind of hacked their own device, and they have had DVB-T working on it. And Roland, maybe you can make some comments about Hack RF1 and some of the things that can be done with that. Back to you.
Oh, very good. Well, yes, I have played with Hack RF1, and I have to admit, it was one of the first commercially made SDR radios. There's a whole flavor of them out there now, and we got people playing with, like I said, Lime SDR and SDR Angel, and of course I played with the Hack RF1. Used it for both the DVB-T receiving, and of course I have a little exciter that I put an antenna up and plugged the antenna in on the Hack RF1, and after pulling my hair, this side of my hair out, trying to program the thing, I actually got it to work. Yeah. Sometimes experimenting with video, you definitely start losing hair on one end of your head. So anyway, but no, it's a lot of fun, and because that's what it's all about. Amateur radio operators, not just operators, but experimenters, because we can experiment. This is a band that we can actually, utilize to expand our knowledge and just experiment, because that's how things happen in the commercial world. With going into ATSC 3.0 for commercial, now we're looking into ATSC 3.0 for amateur television as well. So, getting into the digital modes is definitely being worthwhile with pristine looking pictures. Matter of fact, I encourage you on August, the last weekend of August, that is, it's on Friday and Saturday, and that is the DATV, Digital Amateur Television QSO Party. It is a international party of amateur television operators, and it's hosted by Peter Cousins over in Australia. And we have anchors throughout the entire world going into their systems, having their people check in on their repeater systems. So you have a great flavor of what's happening regarding amateur television on the DATV QSO party. And let me see if I can pull up that actual date. It is in August, and here we go. It's August. Okay, so on our time zone, the international part of it, or the Australia and their territories, they're going to be on our time zone Thursday, August 25th. And then, of course, the United States starts on Friday, our time, August 26th. And that will start at 5 o'clock p.m. on the U.S. And usually they don't make it to the West Coast until about 8 o'clock p.m. our time. So it is a 2-day event. And so we definitely encourage you to check us out, watch our website, and definitely mark your calendars for August 25th and 26th of this year for the Digital Amateur Television QSO Party. It is a blast. And speaking of, the Australian repeater systems have gone into DVB-T2 with the capability of going 4K, and they're experimenting 4K ATV as we speak. So a lot of things are happening, a lot of things are changing, and I'm going to pass it over to you, Rod.
Okay, thanks. follow up on Amanda's prior message, but she has another follow-up message about the moon landing. So let me say a little bit about both things. A lot of this experimentation and a lot of there's a lot of repurposing going on, where there are devices out there that are very versatile, and the mesh networking people are doing this with devices too, where they reflash the firmware to make the devices do things they weren't originally intended to do. And that's happening with a lot of these SDR dongles. So there's a lot of open source software and a lot of people interested in experimenting with it. A lot of these people are academic, so they're at universities and so on. And yeah, if I was in electrical engineering or computer engineering and I was looking for something fun to do, I would definitely be experimenting with some of this stuff, trying to create a better mousetrap. So you're probably aware of some of that stuff, and maybe you're one of those people yourself, and oh, that's got to be a lot of fun. And then back to the moon landing, again, referring back to medium scan television. Medium scan television was intended to actually use radios like FM radios, where they just squeeze a little extra bandwidth out, generally like under a 100 kilohertz bandwidth. So I don't know how much experimenting is going on there, but I know that there's some. And just Google medium scan TV, and you'll see what that's about. The moon landing was actually, you said 320 lines, 10 frames per second. The frames per second allow you to minimize or decrease the bandwidth that you use. And I want to talk about audio and video in a second too, related to this. But 320 lines is really considered a fast scan bandwidth. We used to refer to it as VHS quality, where if you remember VHS tapes, they were kind of blurry and not really first class, but at least we had.
It didn't look blurry in 1980.
Yeah. That was the bleeding edge, and now it's just bleeding. So yeah, back in those days, I mean, gee, it was amazing to get video live from the moon. That was incredible. It was, absolutely amazing. So it's considered, it's not considered medium scan, it's considered fast scan, and they just tweak the technology to fit the transmit and receive equipment that they had available, and of course they were probably strapped with weight considerations and power considerations. So yeah, by today's standard, that was not very good quality. But back then, I can tell you, because I saw it live, it couldn't have been more thrilling if it was an IMAX presentation. The thrill was not in the quality of the video, it was in the event and the magnificence of the event. So anyway, long answer to your question.
One giant leap for mankind. And
that's right.
That was a giant leap, because we never transmitted a television signal beyond the Earth at that time. And so Apollo 11 made a huge breakthrough. And so, when it comes to with amateur radio regarding does it fall into a medium scan? No, it's still fast scan television, because you're still transmitting a faster rate in comparison to slow scan, because slow scan is, using HF frequencies, and you're just simply getting line by line by line by line. It's almost like watching a fax machine on a TV screen. So
yeah, Scott has a comment. We can get to that in a second. I want to make this comment about audio and video with digital communications. It may be surprising to you that when you're transmitting digital communication with audio and video, everything goes out in packets. You may or may not know that. It's not just a constant stream. It's a whole bunch of little bits of information that are little pieces that are sent out a little at a time. And of course, there's often interference that so some of these packets may not make it and they may have to be retransmitted. And the technology has to be able to put all of these pieces together. Well, the surprise to me came when we transmitted audio and video, and the video always seemed to work pretty well. It was the audio that crashed all of the time. And if you think about it, it makes sense. If you lose if you're sending 30 frames of video, 30 pictures a second, and you lose a few of them, well, you have a very slight interruption that's almost imperceptible to your eye, and it looks almost normal. Now, if you have audio and you drop out chunks of audio, it very quickly becomes impossible to understand. So our experience was really odd that we would, if we had interference or limited bandwidth, we would lose the audio and the video would come through. So just an interesting side story about digital communication. So Scott's got a question out there about, or maybe a comment. Do you want to take it, Roland?
Sure. Scott, VHS quality was because the broadcast industry didn't want consumer quality to match broadcast quality. Big industry lobby. Well, you know what? This is the reason why the Betamax failed. Because Betamax was far superior quality. And of course, it was developed by Sony. And of course, VHS was developed by Philips. And so, but consumers really took into VHS because of the option of having long playing, 6 hours of recording time, as part of it. Yes. And, obviously if someone tried to shoot VHS in an event format, basically, it didn't look so good. I was there. I was a video shooter back in the 80s. And so, yes, so Sony basically expanded into their broadcast realm, getting into Beta SP and all that. So that was the big industry standard back in the late 80s and 90s with Beta XP. So you bet. So Scott, thank you very much for sharing that. Rod, back to you.
You probably cringed when DVDs came out too, and certainly Blu-ray. Okay, so it's hard to hold the people back, and even the big industry wants to make money, and they see opportunities like this to make money. Now the broadcasters are one part of it, but there are a lot of other people trying to squeeze money out of people too. And if you give them something that they like, they will pay for it. So let's see, a couple of, keep those questions rolling in. A couple of comments while we're waiting for any more questions. They may be winding down a little bit now. For those of you who are out there, there are two things to keep in mind after this presentation is over. Our day is not over. We have an amateur television lounge out in the lobby. Go to the lobby and look for the amateur television lounge. And it's one of those big screens that you can click on and go into, and we will be there to follow up with answering questions. And the beauty of that is we have time. We can focus on your specific needs. We can focus on what area you live in, what activity is going on there, what equipment you might want to use in that area for your specific needs. And we're happy to do that. And I'll be out there pretty much the rest of the day until 5 o'clock.
Yeah, and we're happy to show our live feed as well as with our ATN Santiago Peak repeater system. It's live on youtube.com, and we can give you some examples of what a net control looks like on our lounge. So yeah, we can definitely give you that opportunity to really get the juices flowing. And wow, there is something beyond the 2-meter microphone. Yes, there is.
And if you want to find out about the handouts, it's going to take me a while to get that information. We will have that information for you in the Amateur Television Lounge. So I highly recommend, if you have any interest in ATV, that you get these handouts. and especially the one on equipment and where to get it. That's what this presentation is really all about. And the other thing is realize that you don't have to have any equipment, any special equipment to get on ATV. If you go to whereby.com/ATN1, especially during our nets on Tuesday nights and Sunday nights, you will come up on a screen like Hollywood Squares with everybody else, and you can sit and chat with them. Well, that's all internet. But what we do, what Roland does, and he's very good at directing all of this stuff, he can put the whole screen on with everyone on it so that we could chat with each other. And he can select an individual person off that screen and transmit your signal from the internet on into our repeater system, where it gets spread out to all of our other repeaters, and it also gets streamed. So without any equipment, under his control, you can be a celebrity on amateur television. And then, of course, we'd encourage you to get some equipment to get on. There are a lot of advantages of having your own equipment, and it's really a lot of fun to get the equipment together and get on the air. So yeah, there you go. The lounge. Check out the lounge. Check out Whereby. You can do that anytime. I'm going to tell you a secret. Even when we don't have a net, if you go out to Whereby, if Roland is available, he gets notified when you pop into the room, and he might just come out and share audio and video with you. And so maybe you have some comments on that. So back to you, Roland.
You bet. Well, obviously, if you'd like to contact any one of us, we do have a membership tab on our website. And of course, you can contact Rod, myself, Jim. Mike Collis. Mike Collis is a wealth of information as well, so you can contact one of us. Just go to our website, www.atn-tv.com. Go to membership, and then, of course, I'm under the Southern California tab, and, of course, Rod is on the Arizona tab. And so you can contact any one of us, and we'll be happy to help to answer your questions. Getting involved in amateur television. How do I get on for free? Whereby.com/ATN1. I should write that down too. So let me put that information down as well. But we definitely encourage you to I hope you gain something out of this regarding what you need and how to get it in regards to amateur television, its gear, its technology, and how we use it. And of course, it's all about the fun. And of course, this is kind of like our forte that we do on our Whereby Roundtable, and we're sharing information. We're thinking about ideas. What kind of content, what kind of technology. We're thinking about ATSC 3.0. How can we incorporate that with our crowded bandwidths? What can we do? So, and most importantly, is getting amateur television repeater systems to become a voice. And because we're one of the what we call high user bandwidth. We use like 6 megahertz of bandwidth. At least we used to have 6 megahertz of channels, and so now we're there's sub channels within our passband, and things are just getting crowded. But as technology grows, we need to preserve our frequencies, and so that is very, very, very important. And so we hope that you will gain something from out of this, and we hope that you become users of the Amateur Television Network. And I just heard myself double twice on my phone. It was really weird, so I had to turn that down. And so, like I said, any more questions that you have, just always contact us. Definitely, we would love to have any of your questions. I know the presentation should be available within after the event, 30 days. Within that 30-day window. So we hopefully you gain something from it. Rod, back to you.
Okay, I see a couple of new pop-ups here. Robert Kirby says, thanks, guys, from Plano, Texas. Very good. And Rick, KO4ULT, you spoke of BG Kentucky. I can't remember what BG is about earlier. Do you have a connection for them? they're pretty close to my location. You might know more
BG's
about
Bowling Green.
Oh, Bowling Green. Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Roland. I don't know much about that.
Yeah, Mike Collis, Bowling Green ATV is a chapter of the ATN, and we do get together with them, on occasion, usually on our nets. And of course, Mike Collis, WA6SVT, he is our not only our treasurer but our technical liaison, technical trustee for a lot of our ATV repeater systems. And he loves to travel around the country to not just meet other people of the amateur television community that we are. He loves to help too. He constructs towers for people. He, gets amateur, television repeaters on the air. He's an incredible guy. And of course, comes from a broadcasting background. He's a transmitter engineer at Mount Wilson, at the Mount Wilson Hilltop for KCAL, KCAL, and KCBS television. And so, what a guy. So, yes, we do have a connection as an ATN chapter with the Bowling Green Amateur Television Repeater Club.
And
back to you, Rod.
Rick, if you come to the Amateur Television Lounge, we can scratch around and probably get you a lot more information on that we can't get instantaneously here. And also, if you want to send me an email, my call sign is WB9KMO @gmail.com. If you send me an email, we can go back and forth, and I can feed you contact information of the people that are active around there, so you can get in touch with them. We would love for you to become part of that group. That'd be fantastic. And we have a lot of fun that we can't really show you right now. We actually we did amateur television, the first social network presentation, and we showed off some of the things that we do. But when we have these nets with all of these people on at the same time, it's not like a check-in, check-out net. I mean, we're sometimes on there for hours, going back and forth. We've made really good friends. There's one right now, Jim. And we talk about all kinds of subjects. Once we stop transmitting over the air, then we can talk about very controversial things without getting into a lot of trouble. And we have a blast. It's like having a multi-party rag chew, but when you have video, it really adds a lot to it. We show off our projects, things that we're working on, even things that aren't ham radio related. Kids come in and they're wondering what's going on, so we joke with the kids, and it's you got to be there to know how much fun it is. Okay, another pop-up from Peter. Go ahead, Roland.
Okay, yes, we got a pop-up from Peter, KE5STL, and basically saying, what are some of the best uses ATV has been put of use as of now? We're the original social network. We're the original social media platform. This is better than the internet. It's all about getting together. It's all about having fun. It's all about, hey, can I get on this ATV stuff and, get on with these wacky people that are like video nuts? Yes, it is definitely worth it. And like I said, we're using ATV for, point-to-point communications, educational. We're using our video truck, doing what we call the San Bernardino Microwave Society meetings. And that's on the first Thursday of each month. You can see that on YouTube Live. And so we're streaming on YouTube 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So if you go on youtube.com/amateur television network, you can see our live feed, and you'll see some strange looking color bars with a W6 ATN Santiago Peak repeater. And that is a live feed that's coming directly from the Santiago Peak repeater system. And then, of course, when amateur television operators break through, you'll be able to break through the color bar slate, and you'll be able to see some activity. So, of course, our most popular activity is on Tuesday evenings. So you're going to see people from all around the country and all around the world checking in on the Amateur Television Network, because it's all about communication, and especially emergency communication when all resources have failed. Because remember, when all else fails, amateur radio prevails. Back to you, Rod.
Okay. Yeah, it's a matter of perspective. People value things in different ways. For me, the most valuable part about I guess I have to say the most valuable part is fun, because I just have a lot of fun with it. I have fun constructing things. I have fun meeting up with the people and all of the social things associated with it. We have meetings where we get together in person too. It's not just about ATV. So that's probably my favorite part. But high on my list is education. That because you have audio and video, and of course we saw that because of the pandemic, everybody started using Zoom, and we really saw, not ideal, but when you can't meet in person, Zoom goes a long ways to allow you to educate, and so ATV has been doing that for a long time. Didn't need Zoom to tell us how to do that. But MCOM, emergency communications, getting video out there so that you can do damage assessments, what I call whatever-a-thons, the public service for events that are happening in the community. I lived in Santa Barbara. One of the things that we covered with audio primarily, but we found that video was pretty important sometimes. There were a couple of locations where floats broke down, and of course this was certainly an issue with the Rose Parade. I don't know if you're aware of it, but any of these floats in the Rose Parade that are high have to bend down so that they're low enough to go under overpasses. And they were designed and tested, but they always broke down. So it was really important to send that video back so that they could see what was going on and see what the problem was and figure out what they were going to do about it. Words didn't always go a long way to describe that. And we in Santa Barbara, that we had a lot of horses, and they were pulling things, and they'd get rowdy sometimes and get turned around under overpasses, or something would happen. And to be able to show what was going on and how well it was being handled and who was handling it was very helpful. So anyway, that's a little background. It's one of those things where when you have ATV, you can do just about any kind of communication. And mesh video is very valuable too as an element of amateur television, because not only can you send audio and video with the mesh, but you can move files around and things like that. And we haven't talked about drones. Drones are pretty valuable too. One of the things we're experimenting with for a 100-mile parade in Arizona, out in the middle of nowhere in the mountains where there are 100-foot trees, we wanted to be able to communicate a fair amount of data between different points in the race, and the radio equipment really wasn't cut all that well to get large amounts of data. So we're experimenting with drones carrying mesh networking. So the drone goes up. While it's up in the air, we have a lot of bandwidth. We can send files and send a lot of data back and forth. And they'll probably stay up less than a half hour before they have to come down to get a new battery. But we do a quick battery exchange, put them back up again. And even in 5 minutes, an hour, we would have plenty of opportunity to send all the information that we needed to do. And they said, well, it won't work because it's so windy. Well, it's not always windy. So when it's not windy, you do what you need to do. When it's windy, you stay down until the wind goes away. Anyway, sorry, I covered that pretty completely and took a lot of time. Back to you, Roland.
Oh, that's okay. You got 24 hours, Rod. You're all good. Anyway, but most importantly, in regards to our digital formats, another worldwide way of communicating with us too is DMR radio. It is the hottest thing out there because not only that, you can have your own personalized talk group and communicate with us ATVers. So our call group, as you may say, and if you do have DMR radio, go to the Brandmeister network and you go to 9410. That's our talk group, 9410 ATV Talk. And that is our main call group. And of course, for those that are DVR non-challenged, as they say, we do have two networks out there. We have 31024 Amateur Television Network on Brandmeister, and we have 224 with TGIF, and that is also the Amateur Television Network. And the best way to do it, you don't even have to get a DMR radio to do it. If you have an Android phone or tablet like I do, I communicate with everyone through my tablet. It is cool. I can go on the mesh with my mesh system. I can go on with the commercial internet, and I do have a DMR radio too. So yes, I'm not deprived on an actual RF device. But Droid Star, download it. It's absolutely free. And then once you get all of your plugins in, and you just go onto 9410 ATV Talk, and you'll be able to communicate with us on DMR. So another thing to think about. Back to you, Rod.
Okay. Yeah, nice segue into cell phones. This is my favorite amateur radio right here. I do probably at least 80% of what I do on ham radio through this as an IO device. It has audio, send and receive. It has video, send and receive. And I do a lot of mesh networking. And so I can connect this up to the mesh network. And think of it as being a high-tech microphone that can do so many other things. So and younger people just love this. Oh, you mean I can use my cell phone on ham radio? Oh my, you sure can. And so if you want to talk more about that, come on down to the Amateur Television Lounge. We'll fill you in on some of the things that we do with cell phones.
Well, very good. Well, like I said, you probably have a little bit of time left for some more of your questions. And of course, you can always join us on our lounge, obviously for just some roundtable talk, or, talk about ATV, talk about your experience, talk about how you like to get experience, or how we can force you to get experience. Hey, it doesn't take experience. It just takes a lot of fun. That's what it's all about. You got it. All right. Well, it looks like we're going to probably have to wrap this up, Rod. Any closing comments?
Well, we say this all the time in a lot of different ways, but my favorite line is, we look forward to seeing you on ham radio.
There you go. And of course, Jim, K6SOE, I just showed his picture up there on the screen. And of course, he always says, if you're not on ATV, you're just not getting the picture. So that's our good buddy Jim up there in Mount Diablo. He lives in Pittsburgh, California. Great guy. Great net on Thursdays. Go on BATC. You can chat with him on Thursdays, 8 o'clock Pacific Daylight Time. You got it. Shoot the picture.
This is for our favorite friend, Mark, there in California.
Mark
has one of these guns, and he's always shooting the picture.
Exactly. W6MAF, Mark Fisher up in Oak Hills, California. He always gets his ray gun out on nets, and he goes, shoot the picture. You got it. It's always good. Well, Rod, hey, thank you very much for coming in with us, bud. We appreciate it.
Hey, and thanks for all the great questions. Yeah,
we got a question. Hey, Rod, hold the show. Hold the phone here. We got a question. Okay, with a 10-watt transmitter and a suggested antennas, what type of range is typically available? Well, of course, it all depends on the downstream of that 10-watt unit. I've seen people get as much as up to 80 miles with an optimal beam antenna. Some like Superflex or Heliax, and going into your transmitter. That's not impossible as long as it's line of sight, away from trees and hilltops, and hilltops. We aim for hilltops as long as there's an ATV repeater on there. No, avoid rooftops and trees and everything like that. Clear line of sight. You can get, and of course, if tropoducting is happening, you can even get further. Like what happened with Gordon West and Paul up in Hawaii. And so far, that's held the distance record of 2,509 miles. There you go. And it was the inversion layer and tropoducting conditions that was happening. So just from a 10-watt transmitter, you can get up at as much as 2,500 depending on conditions. But nominally, it can be up to 100 miles or more with a optimal antenna is not that uncommon. DXing is actually a lot of fun with amateur television. You just get as high as you can and get a big giant beam antenna, rotate around, and see if you can pick up other stations. So that's a fun hobby in itself. Awesome.
I gotta get a picture of my morning margarita here.
The old cactus cooler.
I don't know if you noticed, it's Amateur Television Network blue right here. Not the margarita, but the glass that it's in.
That's
yeah,
absolutely
with 10 watts is plenty of power. With 10 watts, if you're in a town with a repeater, chances are you can get into the repeater just fine. With digital, I transmit, I have about a 15 element Yagi on 434, and with 5 watts average power digital DVB-T, I transmit 55 miles into the repeater on the west side of Phoenix. I'm on the east side, and that's on the west side, and perfect picture. Okay, so 10 watts is plenty. Keep in mind also that mesh networking typically runs a half watt or less, and of course they sometimes use larger antennas, dish antennas, and at higher frequencies. And it's very easy to go 10 miles or more, and a lot of the stations dish to dish can go 30, 40, 50 miles or more. I have one guy who checks into, I have a sector antenna up, if you know what that is. It covers 120 degrees of width, and it's not super high gain, but a guy from 60 miles away checks into it pretty regularly. So yeah, 10 watts and any antenna, on 434, you want at least probably 6 or 8 elements for something close in, and maybe 15 elements for something farther away. So yeah, it doesn't take super high.
Hello.
Okay, that's all I've got here. I see no more questions, but maybe they'll pop in.
Me too, but you know what? We can definitely answer the questions in the lounge. We're getting people in the lounge right now, so definitely.
Okay. I'm going right there as soon as we end it here.
Okay, sounds good. All right, so yes, if you want to continue and join us on our lounge, go right into that Kumo, that Kumo space, that lounge tab, and once you're in the lobby, look for that Amateur Television Network, lounges basically.
Amateur
we got
Television Lounge.
We have a piano in our lounge. I mean, that's even better.
and there's a lot of booze in there. I haven't figured out how to drink a virtual drink though, but the piano
we got
plays
couches,
music.
we got padded chairs, especially after sitting through our meeting. You need a padded chair.
Okay,
very good.
Well, we hope to see you there, and
you got it. So
we can interact
and
better.
like I said, if you have any more questions, you can always contact us. We're here to help, and so just go to our website, www.atn-tv.com. For more information. Join us in our lounge. We can actually have a chat right there in our lounge table. So we would love to see you. Rod, Again, thank
Okay.
you, my friend. Appreciate you.
You're welcome. If you don't have to, a lot of fun if you can set up ATV locally. And I originally did it on a dare with a friend of mine because there was nothing else around. And we had a blast just getting it to work, and then we got it working. It was a lot of fun too. If you can't get anybody on here where you are, we'd love to have you join us using Whereby.
I think Rod's stream stopped. He froze up. Anyway,
Yes,
join us on our launch. We would love to have you. And like I said, thank you very much for your participation. Oh, there, you're okay. You're unfrozen there, Rod. Very good. So we're going to say goodbye now. We'll see you at our launch table. So you take care. 73, thank you for participating in the amateur television, what you need and how to get it. I'm Roland, KC6JPG, saying thank you very much for attending, my friends. Enjoy the show. See you at our lounge. KC6JPG, we're clear. And Rod, how you? See you at the lounge, bud.